Hi, my name is David Greilsammer, and I'm very excited about my two upcoming performances for premiere performances of Hong Kong at the beautiful Hong Kong City Hall. As you probably know, I will be performing my recital called Scarlatti Cage Sonatas, and this is a very unusual recital program. This is the reason I wanted to record this podcast to present to each one of you my program and why this program is so dear to me, so important to me, and why I have been performing it over 65 times now all over the world. First of all, I would like to present the composers Domenico Scarlatti and John Cage. In this program, I will be performing the Sonatas of Scarlatti and John Cage. And let me start by introducing Scarlatti. He is, as you probably know, one of the most famous Baroque composers. He lived in the 18th century. He was born in Italy, and he traveled quite a lot. He went to England, Austria, and then to Spain. And he is a very mysterious, very unusual composer. We don't know so much about him, and that makes him such a fascinating character. As you might know, he wrote more than 500 sonatas for the keyboard. 500. This is really incredible. And I absolutely adore these sonatas, and I will tell you why. Because these sonatas are completely different from what any other composer was doing at the same time. The sonatas of Scarlatti are wild, they are audacious, they are daring, they are full of colors, they are full of crazy harmonies. They are very, very virtuoso for the pianist. And you can tell that Scarlatti loved to take risks. And I always found these sonatas to be very refreshing compared to many other Baroque composers. And I have been playing these sonatas throughout my teenager years and then many, many years later. And I have always loved these sonatas very much. And now let me tell you a little bit about John Cage. He was an American composer, of course, lived in the 20th century, and he was an avant-garde, modern, and very, very, very special character because he loved to do experiments. And in fact, John Cage is not only a composer, but he's really an inventor of sounds, an inventor of new ideas, an inventor of new kinds of rhythms, of new kinds of musics. And to me, he is one of the greatest revolutionaries, greatest pioneers of classical music. He was never afraid of taking risks when he composed his music. Now, his sonatas are very different because his sonatas are actually not written for a normal piano. They are written for the prepared piano. Now, why is it called a prepared piano? Because you have to take 2 or 3 or 4 hours to prepare the piano before you can play these sonatas. And it's really interesting because when you prepare the piano, you have to insert pieces of plastic, pieces of rubber, screws, nuts, bolts, pieces of wood, erasers, and all sorts of objects inside of the piano. And this is very interesting because by doing that, John Cage actually created a percussion orchestra. As you may know, John Cage was fascinated by percussion. He was fascinated by African percussion. He was fascinated by Indian percussion and also by Asian percussion. And he had this dream in his mind to create a percussion orchestra with just a piano. And this is extraordinary because with just one instrument, the piano, he was able to create an entire percussion orchestra. And this is how the sonatas for prepared piano were born. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about the pairing of these two composers and why I decided to put them together in this recital. For many years, I was performing Scarlatti separately and John Cage separately, and it is only one day I woke up in the morning and suddenly I had this idea, this realization that the sonatas of John Cage and the sonatas of Domenico Scarlatti are extremely similar. They have so much in common, actually. And of course, these two composers lived more than 200 years apart. And of course, they never knew each other and they never met. But there was something about the sonatas of these two composers that to me felt like they were extremely similar. And I will explain a little bit what is, in my opinion, so similar about these two composers and their sonatas. As I mentioned earlier, Scarlatti and John Cage are both unusual characters. They're very different from any other composer in music history because they are revolutionary composers. They are audacious composers. They are composers who decided to invent new kinds of sounds. These are composers who were not afraid of tradition. They were not afraid of what other composers might say. And they completely invented a new way of making music. With Scarlatti sonatas, there is sometimes one musical theme, sometimes there is 3 musical themes, and sometimes you have 15 musical themes. This is something incredible. He just did not care about what people would say about him, and he wrote music that was completely different. And I can say the same thing about John Cage. His music has absolutely no symmetry in it. It is wild, it is audacious, and John Cage, in fact, by creating the prepared piano, invented a new way of creating sounds. Because for those of you who are going to be there for my recitals, you will notice that when I play the prepared piano, it does not sound like a piano at all. It sounds like percussion. And I find that to be spectacular. And this is why I decided one day that I wanted to put these two composers together. One more thing that I would like to tell you about is how this recital will actually happen. How am I doing this pairing of the two composers? And as you will notice, I have 2 pianos on stage. And I have a stool, a chair in between the pianos. And I play the 2 pianos alternating between Scarlatti and John Cage. So I start with a Scarlatti sonata, then a John Cage sonata, then a Scarlatti sonata, and so on, and so on, and so on. And my stool is turning around, and this way I can turn and play Scarlatti and John Cage and Scarlatti and John Cage without any interruption, without any stopping between the sonatas. And this is what I would say is maybe the biggest challenge about this recital program, is to bring together without any interruption the music of these 2 composers. And it is my hope that for those who will be there for this recital, they will be able to notice all these incredible similarities between the 2 composers. And maybe, I hope, if you close your eyes, at some point, you will not even know if you are listening to a sonata by Scarlatti, or if you're listening to a sonata by John Cage, because you will let yourself travel in this very special journey. And the music will take you and will bring you to different perspectives, to different kind of visions, to a different world. And this is, to me, why I feel so strongly about this program. And this is why I really hope to see you all on September the 5th and September the 8th at my recital, Scarlatti Cage Sonatas. I really look forward to meet all of you. This is going to be a very special occasion, and I would like to remind you that this is actually the first time that I will be performing this recital in Asia and the first time in Hong Kong. So it's a very special and a very emotional moment for me, and I can't wait to give this recital at Premier Performances of Hong Kong. So I see you soon, and thank you for listening to this podcast. I look forward to meet you very, very soon. Bye-bye.